Hi, good evening, Oakdale family and friends. Welcome to our special blast tonight. Tonight our topic is tonight our topic is making the decision not to take the COVID vaccine. So last week we had guests Vernell Gaines, Sandra Hudson, and her sister Ellen Hudson on to share their personal journey regarding being hospitalized prior to receiving her first COVID vaccine. Remember, Ellen Hudson had shared that she had followed all the recommended precautions, wearing a mask, washing her hands, being socially distanced, but she still ended up with the COVID infection. So she shared that she was hospitalized for 4 weeks, not really remembering the first 2 weeks of her hospitalization, during which she lost 60 to 70 pounds. Then she was discharged 4 weeks later. She went home with oxygen for about 2 weeks. Today, as of now, she has no oxygen, she's gained her weight back, and she's able to live her life normally. Her sister Sandra Hudson shared how having her sister hospitalized and not knowing if her sister was going to live, she described it as being one of the scariest times of her life, because not only was her sister seriously ill, but her brother was ill, as well as a couple of her sister's children were ill as well. But they were not so ill that they had to be hospitalized. But Sandra and Ellen Hudson's brother was hospitalized. So then we also heard from Vernell Gaines, where he shared his story about hesitancy and distrust in the vaccine period. He said, really, if you really think about it, there are a lot of things happening around the same time as COVID, such as the George Floyd shooting, there was looting going on, people getting sick, and people were actually dying. He finally admitted that he agreed to take the vaccine only because it became a job requirement. And his mom had been really pushing him, strongly encouraging him to take the vaccine. But then he really talked a little bit about his hesitancy. Why did he hesitate, to really take the vaccine? He said it was really centered around a lot of mistrust about the vaccine. He said he felt his information was being made on the fly. They were saying this, they were saying that. So finally, after he did receive the vaccine, because remember, it was a job requirement, and because of the pushing of the mom, he still had some concerns. His concerns were about some of the side effects that he may have had. And his deepest reason, he later said, was for not taking it was because he's always taken his health really seriously. For example, he was taking vitamins, he was drinking plenty of water, he was eating his fruits and vegetables. So being young, he felt that his body was strong and he had never been ill. So why do he really need the vaccine? But his final comment was, or some of his final comments were, rather you get the vaccine or not, make sure that you're taking your health seriously. His scariest moment, though, he recalled, was when his parents became really ill and there was nothing he can do. So today we have a special guest on today to talk about, share his story about vaccine hesitancy. We also have Carroll Bell on representing United Way Chicago. And we also have Dr. David Ellens on, who at the end will give us wrap-up comments. And we also have Elena on, who is one of the health navigators. So there are 4 health navigators: myself, Virginia Julian, Elena Reese, Tammy Moore, and Erie Crawford. So we're all 4 navigators for Oakdale Covenant Church here. So Carroll, would you like to just give a general overview about Choose Healthy Life?
Absolutely. Thank you, Virginia. And thank you to Oakdale Covenant for inviting me again for the second time to participate and speak on behalf of Choose Healthy Life during your Facebook Live sessions. These COVID information sessions are very, very helpful for folk. And quite a part of what Choose Healthy Life represents. So Choose Healthy Life and is a national program that was created by a young lady out of New York City, Deborah Fraser House. Deborah had, in the early 80s, created another program that was centered around Black men contracting the AIDS virus. And she submitted her program to the federal government and was awarded grant funding to help Black men around the nation in tapping into resources and health and medicines where they were plighted in their areas, and help to save many lives, many Black male lives, and even women that had contracted the AIDS virus. She used that same foresight when COVID-19 was first introduced to us in 2020, and felt the need to devise a new program centered around the health disparities, health concerns for Black folk in the communities. And she thought that it would behoove her to find a strategic partner to reach folk in the communities on the ground level and speak to those people and help them to understand what most of all of us didn't know about COVID, the virus, how it could impact us, especially impact our population of folks with chronic disease or with already with health issues, I should say, to save their lives by giving information and making sure that they had the access to resources, to vaccinations, which we'll talk about in this session. It's very interesting to hear, and we know that there are many folks, quite many of them through our lives, that are not interested in being vaccinated. So for various reasons, and it is a valid discussion to have. And so Choose Healthy Life is administered through the Black church predominantly. Because the Black church is our institution in the Black community that we trust most, foremost, above and beyond any other institution or organization. Social service runs second to the church. Deborah Fraser House felt that that would be the direct way to reaching the community. And so she built a council of Black clergy around the country and was able to tap 120 churches to participate in this program, to start with their congregation first, and then to outreach to the local community where the church resides. And so with that effort, the Black churches have been able to impact over 12 million folk by informing them about COVID, the various stages of COVID, the newly onset variants that have created from this virus and continue to create. And then also to help our community get tested to see if they have the disease, and then further to be vaccinated. And not only through the Black church, she also partnered with the National Medical Association, which are the Black physicians around the country, to help educate our community on what COVID is and the impact of COVID on Brown and Black folk. The Choose Healthy Life rolled out in the Chicago region in October, and there were 5 churches nominated to participate in the program, 3 of which are active. Oakdale Covenant being our lead church. And I want to thank Oakdale and the 4 Health Navigators for the tremendous work that you guys have been doing in reaching out beyond the church and making sure, like sessions like this, hosting clinics, hosting testing, doing door-to-door canvassing, going to businesses in the local area, and sharing with folk information about COVID. The other two churches that are active currently in the program is Greater Mount Vernon Baptist Church and then New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. And all three churches have been quite active in their efforts and their outreach activities and have made a tremendous impact on vaccinating folks right there at their churches, talking to folks, bringing folks in, and testing people. And so the church, again, has shown the world, shown the nation, I should say, shown the United States that it's very much a center and focal point of our community, and that support needs to be given to the Black church to help further the community economically, health disparity, food disparities, and many other issues that we're plighted with in the community. So with that being said, again, I'm very glad to be on the session tonight and very interested in hearing from the guests and hopefully being able to help the guest come to, some resolve with how to handle his or her health concerns and help us to eradicate, this deadly disease. And so with that, if there are any questions about Choose Healthy Life, I'm open to take your questions. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to you, Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carol. We're filming live on Facebook. We're also showing live on YouTube as well. So this is an interactive conversation because we're live. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat. Erie Crawford is monitoring the YouTube live channel, as well as I'm monitoring the Facebook live channel for potential questions that may come about. So we have Elena Reese, who I would like to introduce our special guest tonight that we have. Remember, our conversation is not about saying who's right and who's wrong, but we're looking at why some people choose not to vaccinate, because we're still learning. There are so many things that are happening behind the scenes that we don't hear so much about. There are clinical trials that are going on that are looking at things like taking higher dosages of fish oils, taking higher dosages of vitamin D. So those trials, along with others, are looking at other ways for people who are not interested or cannot take the vaccine for a variety of reasons. How can they remain healthy as well during this COVID-19 outbreak? Elena?
Hi, so I am more interested in having the conversation, or what I hope this conversation will be the conversation that gives more insight about one's personal journey and what it takes to understand oneself when it comes to medical advice. Do we trust it? How do we look at it? And then how do we get past that hump? Two, just understanding that there's different outcomes for different reasons. And that I know that we all, or most of us, will agree that the vaccination is the way, but there's obviously another group that does not. So to understand that, to come to a middle ground and an understanding so that we are able to move forward in a more predictable manner, in a manner that will help us to get to the next step instead of being stuck on one. So that's the conversation and how I would like to open up that conversation as to one, why, two, when, like the timeline, and then three, what do we do if we do not take the vaccination? So I'll start the conversation. So Jamil, how are you today?
I'm good. How you feeling?
Good. I am well. So, just so that people have a understanding of you and your background, just explain to us just a little bit like what your statistics are. How old are you? What's your background? Are you in the public? Do you have constant engagement with the outside world? Like, what does your day look like? What does your world look like in this pandemic?
My world is completely different than it was when the pandemic first started. When the pandemic first started, I actually wasn't working. I was actually getting unemployment when it really started, and I was able to stay at home a lot, be at home a lot, be with my kids a lot. But now that it's deep into the pandemic, I'm back working now. I'm actually working around a lot of different people every day. Tourists, because I work downtown at the Sears Tower, so I be around a lot of different tourists and people from different countries, states, all that. So yeah, my world is real different now than it was when it first started. But yeah, I'm 30 years old. I am not vaccinated. And what else you want to know?
You have kids. How old are your children?
Yeah, I have 3 kids. I have 2 daughters and a son. I got an 8-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old son.
Okay. So with that, what is your stance on a vaccination?
So my stance is what my stance is on almost everything. I'm not trusting nothing unless I know enough about it. I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all, but fear played a big part in getting the vaccination when it first came out because I mostly feared the unknown. I didn't know anything about it. I grew up with a background as I never took flu shots. I don't eat pork. I don't even take pills. You know what I'm saying? I really don't put too much in my body. I don't drink cow milk. I don't eat dairy. It's certain things that I stopped doing a long time ago, and it's more of a personal choice than anything. So my personal choice was not to get the vaccine until I learned a lot more about it. And I lost friends. Friendship, not they didn't die, but people stopped rocking with me because I didn't get the vaccine. And right now, I'm a real basketball fan, and like 97% of the NBA is vaccinated with boosters and everything. And 90% of the NBA in the last 2 months has caught COVID. So in my mind, I'm thinking, if you can still get this vaccine, I mean, you get the vaccine, you can still get COVID at a crazy rate. What's the point of it? I had COVID at the beginning of this year. I had mild symptoms. I had a fever for like 2 days and it went away. Had a slight cough. Haven't been sick since. I really don't get sick at all. Haven't had a cold none this winter. Anything, I really don't get sick. And actually at my job, I got to get tested once a week. So I'm been good. So really the pros and cons, I feel like, what are really the pros of the vaccine? If you can die from getting the vaccine, you can die while having the vaccine, you can still get COVID. You know what I'm saying? I don't really, if it was 100% safe, like where there's no chance you can die, because it's been people just dropping dead after getting the vaccine randomly, young people, 30 years old. It ain't really been pinpointed that the vaccine was the reason, but that's scary. You know what I'm saying? Like young people just dropping dead randomly. And that's scary to me. So like I said, I'm not 100% anti-vaxxer, but until I know it's 100% fail-proof, I'm staying away from it.
Okay. Now, when it comes to your children, because COVID vaccinations are now available for children 5 and up, what are your thoughts on that as well?
Same thing. I wouldn't put none in my kid's body that I would put in my own. You know, like I said, I don't feel like the vaccines really work. You know, people still dying off of them. If it was 100, my kids never had it. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, I don't put stuff in my body. I wouldn't do it with my kids. I made my kids stop drinking cow milk just like me. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't do them like that. So in my mind, I feel like the vaccine ain't worth it. So no, they're not vaccinated at this point in time.
Okay. Now, what would it take for you to change your mind? I know you said that it will take for it to become fail-proof, but what does fail-proof look like to you?
Well, it's a few things that'll take. I feel like it's gonna come to a point where we all gonna have it. Like you don't have to have Netflix. Yeah, you're gonna have to be vaccinated, just have a Netflix subscription at one point. I feel like it's getting real crazy out here. So I feel like it's gonna be a point where my hand will be forced where I will have to get it. That's really the only way. But what I mean by fail proof is I wanna see that it's actually working. Everybody I know with the vaccine has had COVID in the last, you know what I'm saying, month or so. You know what I'm saying? And I haven't had the vaccine and I haven't had COVID. People I know that don't have the vaccine, don't have COVID. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, is there something in the vaccine that's attracting the COVID to you? I don't know. But it's just weird to me that you can still get it. You know what I'm saying? You can still die from it. And it seems like people with the vaccine is getting it at a faster rate than people without it right now. Just right now, thanks to this new variant. But like the numbers have went up this year compared to last year, and it wasn't a vaccine last year. So that just really don't make sense to me. The way they move, they open the world back up. You know what I'm saying? What was that? You know what I'm saying? If y'all really want people to be safe, why did y'all open the world back up? So it just, a lot of things don't make sense to me. So until it makes sense, I won't be dealing with it.
Okay, I see we have a question from Carroll. Carroll is asking, were you or your family vaccinated at childbirth? Are your children, do they have any vaccinations?
This is what people always say. They try to do this because, I don't know. Yeah, we were, but it wasn't my choice. That was something that I didn't choose to do. Their mom chose to vaccinate them, and my mom chose to do that to me. So, yeah, if I could have made a choice when I was an infant, I would have told them, no, don't put that in me. So, yes, I was, though.
Okay, her next question is, do you wear masks at all times?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and then what other precautions do you take from the virus?
I always make sure I wash my hands. The moment I come in the house, I wash my hands. I always wipe down my phones. Take my vitamins, just like they was talking about the other guy. I take vitamins to help with stuff like this. Try to eat right. I don't eat fast food anymore. You know what I'm saying? I go to work and come home, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't go out. I don't party. I just try to stay in the crib as much as possible.
I understand. So I guess the conversation is now that we know where your stance is on the vaccination, and we also know what it takes to change your mind, as well as the precautions that you take. If the virus had given off more than mild symptoms, would your perception on the vaccination be different?
Definitely. If I was to a point where I was too sick, yeah, I would have definitely took it for sure. But like I said, my body beat it within 2 days. I felt back to normal, had a slight cough, and I was like, this was in the beginning, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when I found out. So I haven't had COVID since. I heard it, your body create antibodies afterwards. I don't know how true that is, but like I said, I haven't had COVID since.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because it comes to a point where you gotta trust science, you gotta trust doctors. You know, I ain't saying I 100% don't trust them, but right now I don't know nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? The things that I looked into, it's really not a vaccine. When I looked into it, it's not even a vaccine at all. So I really don't know why it's called vaccine. So that messes with my trust right now. Y'all telling me it's something that it's not already. So I don't know.
Okay. Now, when you did your research, where did you find your research from? Like, where did you go to get your research?
I was looking all over CDC website. TikTok is informative. Different. Listen to podcasts. just trying to listen to different people and the doctors. At the time when it first started, my mom was alive and she had respiratory issues, and she had to go to the doctor a lot. And sometimes I had to go with her, and they'd be talking about the COVID vaccine and why it's important for everybody to have it and all that. So I heard from different people, but I wasn't so.
So we have a couple of questions. So the next question we have is, have you suffered a close loss due to COVID?
No, not yet. Knock on wood.
And then the next one is, what would you say your decision is based from a lack of information about COVID and vaccinations?
I mean, that could be, but I'm not finna sit here and research this every day. I did my due diligence. I already kind of had my mind made up before the vaccine came public, like of me not getting it based off my past. Like I said, I never got the flu shot. I stopped eating pork as a child. You know what I'm saying? This was decisions I made personally. And I really didn't want some stuff injected in me that I didn't know off back. I already knew that. So once I did my research, I was kind of biased. I'm gonna keep it real. I was biased towards the fact that I really didn't want it in the first place. But yeah, I did a lot of research, and of course there's more I can learn. Of course there's more I learned. That's why I'm here on this seminar. Maybe somebody could change my mind, but right now, yeah, I did I feel like my fair share of research.
Now, do you think that the constant change of research that's coming out about the vaccination, about strands and et cetera, does that play a role in your distrust in the vaccination?
Definitely, because like I said, 97% of the NBA have vaccines and have boosters, and now 90% of the NBA has it or had it in the last 2 months. So that kind of scary to me, because it's like, what's the point? You know, y'all all got it still and ain't looking like it's going nowhere. The vaccine is not working in my eyes. You feel me?
Now, would you be open to taking a COVID pill?
A COVID what?
Pill, not a shot,
pill?
but a pill, something that you,
so you saying like
probably have to take
if I
every
got
so
it
often.
to get rid of the symptoms like that?
You know what? I'm not exactly sure how it will work, but it's just the understanding that if there were a pill that can prevent or lessen the symptoms, would you take it?
Probably not, because like I said, I don't even take pills. I don't even take Advil. I don't take pain pills, none of that. If I got natural remedies. I use peppermint oils for certain things. So probably not, unless it got too severe where right now I need help. Knock on wood, I don't see it though.
Now, I'm just giving my own insight. So I am currently on day 10 of quarantine because I had COVID, and I am also vaccinated. I've taken boosters and everything else, and still receive COVID. My journey with COVID, the first few days were absolutely rough, and then of course the next days after they became gentler. Right now I'm probably at 80%, and there's still a while to go. I did do natural remedies with peppermint oil and everything else, the teas, the oils, the gingers, the turmerics, everything that the new generation is taught about self-medicine and natural medicine. I did those things to heal once the process got started. And I'm just sharing my opinion. In my opinion, I could not, if mild looked like that with the vaccination, I could not imagine what being unvaccinated with COVID would have looked like. And so I have suffered close losses from COVID. And my journey to the vaccination didn't come because of those losses. It came because of my son. I had my son December of 2019. In March of 2020, we were going through lockdown, and we first found out about COVID. I went back to work at the beginning of March, and at the end of the March, we were on lockdown. And then throughout the months, the field that I was working in was with childcare. So I was working from babies that were 6 weeks all the way up to grammar school and sometimes high school. So it was a germ city. We did go back in June as an emergency daycare opening for people to go back to work. And then we were one of the first ones to have to look at what CDC said was right, what it wasn't right, when there was constantly things that were happening every few days. We had to come up with emergency guidelines to say how we were going to keep kids safe, how we could do, what we could do, what was best. And we also talked to a lot of parents that felt the same and feel the same, that was similar. And my decision to get the vaccination was simply because I saw too many sick children, I saw too many sick adults, and I had a very young immune system for myself. So when dealing with friends and family who don't want to take the vaccination, it is absolutely their choice. But I know that you said that you lost family members, not family members, but friends because of your decision not to take the vaccination as well. How did that take a role in your decision? Was that something that you thought about? Did you take anybody else's journey in consideration? Like, what happened after those conversations or during those conversations? How did they go?
The way I saw it was just our time for our friendship to end, because there was deeper rooted stuff going on with a few of those friendships. I lost 2 friendships to that, but it was just funny to me, like the person, one of the main people who was getting on me about the COVID vaccine would wake up 6, 7 in the morning and eat donuts and drink beer, you know what I'm saying? And right now you trying to talk to me about health, you know what I'm saying? And so it was just like really contradictory of everything that she stood for, because she didn't care about health, in my opinion. And I was the main one who was telling her about certain things and wanted to. This vaccine came out where she wanted to start talking about health. So that, you know what I'm saying, it didn't change my opinion. I feel like everything happens for a reason. That friendship ended for a reason. So it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Understandable. Now, what questions do you have about COVID vac? Like, what questions do you have that maybe we can answer or put on the table? Is there something that you're curious about, or is there something that you need more information about, or a rumor, or like what is it about COVID-19, the vaccination, Delta, Omicron? Like, what is it that Omicron that you have questions about?
None come to mind. I believe everybody can make their own choice, and I hope y'all live with it. You know what I'm saying? Right. Whether you take the vaccine or not, you know what I'm saying? I believe in pro-choice within everything in life. So I'm not upset for people getting the vaccine. I'm not upset at people who not getting the vaccine, because at the end of the day, you're going to make the best choice for you. Just like you said, you made it while you was working for kids. Working with kids, I would have made that choice if I was in the field with a bunch of sick kids as well. But like I said, when it all started, I ain't really had no reason to, because I was always inside, you know what I'm saying? And I really didn't know enough about it just to do it. So I was just really, to me, my best protection was just staying inside, you know what I'm saying? Not going out. And I wasn't really a party guy anyway before COVID showed up. So it really gave me another excuse to continue to do what I love to do best, and that's be a homebody. So I believe in everybody's choice. I hope it's the best choice. Maybe one day I might switch sides and be advocating for it. But right now, I'm all good.
Now, we have just some more questions, so I'm just going to ask those. So one question is, do you have a primary medical provider where you go at least once a year?
A primary?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Nah. Mm-mm. I really don't go to the doctor like that. Like as far as like getting sick, like I go to Howard Brown, get my checkups, but I really don't get sick like that. You know what I'm saying? To have a primary, if I get something going on, like I went to Stroger when my medical insurance wasn't working like a couple months ago to see what was up with me, and I was all good. But for the most part, I never really needed the primary doctor.
So do you go just 6 months or at least once a year for a checkup to begin?
I go every like two months to get a checkup.
Okay.
2 to 3 months.
Okay. Now, another question is, what is your perception of how the vaccination works? Like, what do you believe the vaccination does once it enters the body, how it works with the system? Like, what's your understanding of it?
I believe it can help fight off the COVID, but that's about it. But I also believe if you take care of your health, you can help fight off the COVID too. So I feel like you injecting your stuff with a bunch of unknowns when you can just really start changing your lifestyle for the better, eating better, living better, period. Because I feel like a lot of I was just watching a video of this girl who taking tests, COVID tests, and she used water to do the test, and all the tests came back negative. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it could be something going on in the water, in the food. You know what I'm saying? I stopped drinking like sink water, faucet water. You know what I'm saying? You never know what is in. So, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I do. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that you don't have a primary doctor, but then you said you go every 2 to 3 months. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
What I thought they was talking about like a certain doctor assigned to me.
No,
I go to a clinic called Howard Brown, and I see different doctors every time. So I wouldn't say I had a primary doctor, because one day it might be Sally, the next day it might be May. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So that's what I meant by that.
So you do have a medical home. In other words, you might not see the same doctor, but you have a place where you can go for your medical care at least once a year. Well, it sounds like you're going at least 3 to 4 times a year just to check to make sure everything is okay.
Yep.
So during those visits, especially when COVID first started, how did those conversations go when they were talking to you or introducing you to consider taking the vaccine? What was that like?
To be honest, I don't remember any doctor actually ever talking to me about getting it. So I can't remember any doctor like telling me about it or anything.
Do you remember, even though they didn't talk about it in the back of your mind, did you think, why aren't they talking to me about this? Is there
I'm pretty sure they probably did, but I'm saying I don't remember the conversation.
Okay.
If it happened, it probably happened real quick. But most of the time, if I can remember, things about the vaccine was on a sheet of paper, and you get to sign yes or no.
Okay.
Now, I would have to agree. And that's just for me, recently having a baby and doing my own checkups and then taking my son to the doctor. Everyone was dressed up in PPE wear, but there wasn't a lot of conversation about the vaccination when it came to, and I have primary doctors for me and my son, and there wasn't a lot of conversation about it. You did see a lot of language on the walls, or you saw printouts and handouts, but there was no one to say, let's have a conversation about it. I had to do that homework on my own. I had to figure out what vaccination I wanted to take on my own. This is before it became necessary for jobs. This was really in the first kind of rollout where they were doing lotteries for the vaccination. And I just got a pop-up on my cell phone that said, hey, we've had you as a client. Do you want to come and have a vaccination? And then that conversation came into play. Well, I am around kids that's coming from different backgrounds and different homes. I think I might, so that was a lot of footwork that was happening by myself. And if I were to watch the news a lot more, if I were to read some of the conversational pieces in the newspaper, I can understand where that hesitancy comes from. I can understand where it's like, there's a lot of information hitting us left and right, or when the vaccinations aren't passing one day and then 2 days later they are. I can understand that hesitancy is what I'm saying. Now, I see we have another question, and the question was for Jamil. What will happen if your job requires you to get the vaccination, as well as for your children, if they are required to have the vaccination in order to go to school? What will your decision making look like? Like, what would that, how would that conversation be for yourself or with yourself?
Okay, well, this job, particularly, if they make me get the vaccine, I'm out. But if it's a job that I consider like a career, like I said, it's maybe a point where I might have to get it based on just everything. Like my kids, they may have to get it just to be in school. And then that's when I have to also just do my due diligence and buckle down on what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna have to really sit down with myself and make that decision. But it all comes down to that. Like I've been thinking about it, but like I'm just hoping it don't happen. So I haven't really been thinking about it 100%. But if it do happen to a point where my hands are tied, it most likely gonna be me getting the vaccine.
You sound like Vernell, and I'll come back to you, David. You sound like Vernell. He said the same thing about the vaccine. He said that he heard so many pieces of information. We didn't think to ask him if he had a conversation with his doctor about it or not, or somebody who he can have a one-on-one conversation. And it's sad to hear that you're plugged into the system and no one ever really sat down and talked to you about it one-on-one, having that conversation. And I apologize for that, from the medical community, because that's a perfect opportunity to answer any question that you have related to the vaccine, based on the knowledge that we had at that time. It's sad to think that you have to get your information from postings on the wall or flyers left on a counter and stuff like that, because that's not the same. That's not the same as getting those questions that you really need to have answers to. So with Vernell, just like you said, he didn't have a choice. He had to decide whether he stayed employed and take the vaccine or become unemployed by not taking the vaccine. And then, of course, his parents, he said, had become ill too. So he went on, took the vaccine, but he's not interested in taking the booster. And he gave his reasons why. He said that he understands that, people have gotten sick, some people have died. He didn't say he knew them personally, but there have been people who have been sick and who have died. I would just, and I'll probably leave this question for David to talk about vaccines. Vaccines is just a name, and vaccines have other names attached to it, like flu vaccine, COVID vaccine, tetanus vaccine, and they're all useful. They have a purpose. So I apologize on behalf that you or Elena didn't get the information. To go back to Elena, pregnant women were being offered the COVID vaccine as a way of helping prevent them from getting COVID during their pregnancy. Many individuals don't understand that pregnancy is a natural process, but during pregnancy, the baby actually suppresses your immune system somewhat. And because of that suppression in your immune system during your pregnancy, that increases the risk of you getting COVID and becoming really, really sick. So, David, or unless Elena, you wanted to.
I was just gonna put just another piece out there. I think that when we're having this conversation, especially, and it wasn't until we had this conversation that the thought even come. And so I made sure where I felt comfortable is working with Black professionals with my health. And I went to places where I did my research to feel like they were the top of the top when it came to healthcare. Do they have the newest machines? Do they have the opportunities? Do they have the staff? Do they have these things? And that's where I planted myself and my son's health. But with that understanding, I also realized that our doctors have their own understanding and preference as well. My son's doctor, she's a great pediatrician, but she works more on natural medicine, and when we look at her background, she did Medicine Without Borders, or she did, in other countries working on where they didn't have those vaccinations. And so her first preference when talking isn't necessarily to always go to medicine. Even when my son got sick, when he got sick with thrush, when he had hand, foot, and mouth, these are things that she was like, well, I know a natural remedy and I want you to try that first. And we did those remedies first before we even talked about what medicine we could look at. It was always, if that does not work out, then let's look at medicine. But we always did a test trial of what it could look like. And so what I'm saying is, and even in my own personal care, and my own doctors, another Black doctor who has been around in the field for years, is the same. I can come to her and say like, hey, I'm having this problem. And she'll say, well, in my years of experience, this is what works. Let's try this before we start trying the medicine. And so when we're starting to talk about vaccinations in the Black community and how we can do those things, we also have to start that approach on the medical field, where it's not that we don't believe that vaccinations don't work. They do work. But before I start offering you these things, are there some other things that we can do beforehand? So that's a very important pin to put there too, when we're trying to understand, even if you have a primary doctor or you have a primary medical center, what is your doctors, the clinics, et cetera, what are their understanding about it? And what do they push first? Do they push the medicine first, or do they push natural medicines? What exactly does that look like in that conversation too?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting conversation about relationships with your doctor. And the young gentleman that's on our panel today, I think that, it seems like he's accessing healthcare. However, I'm wondering, what is he accessing? I think it's very different or difficult to actually get what you need when you see a different person every time you go. And there's really no relationship there. And then obviously, if you had a person you see all the time, then maybe some of these conversations will come up, and then you'll be more trustworthy of what someone has once you trust what your doctor says. Just like we're talking about our Black church, and when people come in and our pastor talks, people trust what he says. So I will probably encourage you to sort of consider maybe changing your model of healthcare, and try to get someone, research, just like the young lady said, of someone that you feel comfortable with, and then maybe try to stay with one person versus the other. Now, it's not so much to make you do things, but at least you'll have the opportunity to sort of make decisions about your health. And if something should happen, you'll be more prepared. Because I think it's very disjointed, and I've seen that model where people go from place to place, and it's very difficult to try to achieve your goal with good health when there's a whole lot of cooking trying to cook in your cooking bowl, and you're not getting the product that you sort of want. So in that, I can see why vaccinations is an issue for him, because there's really no person really, or one person that's really staying in this and being constant in his healthcare life, and that's an issue. It's probably okay now when you're 30, because my son is that age, and obviously you don't see the doctor as much. You probably see him more than my son goes. He probably go once a year, and my other son don't go. But they're at the age where they don't need doctors as much. But as we get older, then there will be doctors to be more prevalent. Secondly, there was a comment made about the NBA and people were getting it. So I think it's not so much the issue about the vaccination not working, it's just that the virus is constantly mutating. So we go from Delta to Omicron. I mean, these are Greek letters, so there are different versions that are coming out. And then we're like, is this vaccination actually going to be useful to sort of be successful? So, and that happens with the flu, the flu shots. So I don't know if you remember, we had H1N1, came from Africa. So we was wondering if that works. Well, we were saved with that because it did work. So, and then this is not the end of it. We doing Omicron, believe me, it's a lot more Greek letters to go, and we probably will see a lot of them before this is over. But I'll save my other comments for later.
And then if I might add on too, I think a part of the hesitancy for folk that are just not wanting to get the vaccination is what our country is doing with the inconsistency of the messaging. And so I don't know about other countries, but what's spewed here in the United States, it's more political. And based on where you sit in your ideology on politics is where you stand along with COVID-19 and vaccinations and boosters and such. And so that lends for confusion. It lends for people just to step away and say, well, I won't deal with it at all because they can't get the message right. And we don't know who's giving the right message at the right time. And it has a lot to do with how our CDC and our top level medical experts are allowed to share the knowledge and the science behind it. So it does not help to serve, our citizens of this country for us to even reach a herd vaccination or, to get to that point where we have a herd mutation because people are torn. They don't know what to believe.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. When Trump was saying his things, when he was there, people were just totally confused. But that just goes back to show that, each of us need a authoritative person that we can rely on. And then once we get that person, then that's what we go with, or unless you're doing your own research, and this is just a plug to let people know, there is a organization, American Medical Association. So that's where all the doctors sort of belong to. But then there's a one called National Medical Association where the Black doctors belong to, and you can sort of Google them and find out what's going on in their stance and stuff. American Black Cardiologists, we have that group. So there are groups that or societies that are here that are just from Black folks that people don't really know about, but they do exist. They have conferences and stuff, and I've been part of NMA for a while. We this is a time to sort of realize what's the access, and then why we are not getting it. And then I think sometimes our medical presentation of how we take care of our patients here could be very disjointed, and then that plays a lasting role of what we think of our medical therapies and treatments that are out there.
I like to go back to a comment that Elena made related to natural products versus traditional products. Actually, that's kind of a shift because it used to be you did natural, then it went to conventional, and now you're seeing a combination of treatment, just like what you said your pediatrician is doing. So sometimes it's almost like you go back to what really worked and then you use some of the new stuff that works. So that's where you're seeing that mixed practice. And that goes back to what Mr. Seeger said in terms of natural. The body is an amazing machine. It tries to take care of itself, but there are things that we have to do as owners of these bodies. Not only do we have to rest, drink water, eat our fruits and vegetables, minimize our stress, but we also need to move these machines too. Because when we stop taking care of our bodies and going to someone who we can help us maintain these bodies at least once a year or once every other year, the sooner, the better it is in the long distance if you develop a long relationship with a medical provider, wherever that is. But whoever your medical provider is, it should be someone who listens to you, listens to what you're saying to them, instead of telling you information. And, sometimes they'll come in, they don't have time to read your medical stuff, and they'll just start telling you stuff. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I had like some questions too that I need to have answers for. So when you go in to see, once you find your medical place where you would like to go and spend time, always have a list of questions. If you have 15 questions on that list, take the first top 5 and put them in order that's most important about your health, so that you can be a great team player on the team with your doctor. So we only have a few minutes left. So David, did you want to give closing comments and I can do final announcements?
Yeah, so just to sort of reiterate what we talked about last week concerning the vaccinations, the Johnson & Johnson is not preferred anymore. Moderna and Pfizer is. As you see in Chicago, there's been a big surge of the Omicron and Delta that's still present. And it's not just Chicago, but it's all over the United States. So definitely you want to pay attention and be safe. And this is New Year's, and be conscious of all that going outside. And then thirdly, I think, which is probably more the theme of this particular presentation, is that pick someone, your primary care person that you can talk to. When people come to my office, it's almost like a family atmosphere. We shoot the breeze and talk about other stuff. And then we get down to business, and then and making sure we sort of cover what they actually come in for. But the thing is that whoever you pick, you should be able to tell them anything, tell them your deepest secrets, all that stuff, and be able to express yourself to the point where you try to do your health. You should look at the health system as a partnership. It's a teammate. I tell them on the team, I tell them I don't like to lose. So you got to tell me what's wrong. We don't have no losing there. And there's a goal that you have to achieve. And some people say, well, I think I could do it myself. Okay, well, we don't need medication. But obviously if you don't make it, then I'm gonna have to help you. So you find someone that you can sort of relate to and talk to. If you're able to do that, then I think you'll be successful.
Any final comments from Elena, Carroll, or Mr. Seegers?
I will say, as a young vaccinated person who's had the booster and washes hand, doesn't congregate, you also have to keep in mind to be very vigilant when it comes to your family and friends. I received COVID came into my house. I didn't go out to it. Does that make sense? And so we have to keep that understanding with being younger and old and middle and et cetera, that you could do everything right. And sometimes it could just be the piece of mail, the conversation you have with the mailman or Amazon or whoever it is, touching the doorknob or et cetera, taking the trash out. It can be any of those little things. And so it's easy to be afraid, or it's easy to start a phobia because of it, but we just have to make sure that we're doing the best for ourselves, and that if we do come in contact with COVID, in whatever variant that it is, that we're making sure that we are taking care of ourselves, and not just for ourselves, but for others around us as well.
Thank you. Mr. Siggers, any final words?
No, everything that was said was very informative. Thank you guys for having me. Anytime y'all need me back, I'll be here.
Awesome. So I would like to end by saying, how did you decide if you should get the COVID vaccine or not? Do your research, have conversations with, if you have a medical provider or clinic that you go to, have that hardcore conversation with them. Then get the other answers from reliable sources such as the Illinois Department of Public Health, the Chicago Department of Public Health, and CDC. A couple of primary reasons some have taken the COVID vaccine, you've already heard, to protect themselves, to protect their families, especially the children who cannot take the vaccine if they're younger than 5 years old. We just recently had the ability to provide those vaccines to them. Right before getting on, the news was talking about that in the United States, we're averaging 277,000 COVID infections a day. And the hospitalizations are less because right now, Omicron doesn't seem to make you as sick as the Delta, but some people are still getting one or the other. And as Dr. Ellen said, there are many other Greek letters to come. We've had at least about 21 or so, or 20 or 21 Greek letters so far, but the ones that have caused the biggest problems are lately the Delta and the Omicron. So take your health seriously. We only have one life and one body, and we want to live our life to the fullest. Thank you. Our next vaccine clinic at Oakdale Covenant Church is scheduled for Friday, January 7th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for those who are interested in getting the vaccine. We will have vaccines available for those who would like to vaccinate their children between the ages of 5 to 11. And that vaccine that's available for children only is the Pfizer. Just the Pfizer vaccine is available for that. We also have another vaccine. It's called the Chicago Clergy Conclave Vaccine and Testing Event with Congresswoman Robin Kelly, and that's scheduled at Mount Vernon Baptist Church, which is located at 8700 South Laughlin, and that's on January 14th as well. Thank you and have a good night, everyone.